Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be reviewing the Anaerobic Natural Processed Colombia Inmaculada Gesha from Onyx Coffee Lab. And there's the box right there. Of course, this is the second coffee from Onyx's Rare Varieties box set, the first being the Sudan Rume, which was released on Monday, and the Eugenioides will be released on Saturday. With each one of these coffees, I'm discussing the information that Onyx provided in the box set, and there's a little booklet right here about each one of these varieties. So for the Geisha, they state this variety will feel the most familiar in the set. Originally from Ethiopia, Geisha gained notoriety in Panama in the early years of specialty coffee. This variety is globally recognized and celebrated for its distinct floral fragrance and aroma, tea-like characteristics, and delicate fruit flavors. Geisha has dominated the competition scene over the past few years, skyrocketing its popularity and availability across the globe. And I've made no secret about my love and admiration for Panamanian coffee, especially Panamanian geishas. Anytime I'm at a new coffee shop or a coffee roaster, it's going to be my first choice if I see a Panamanian, especially a Panamanian geisha on their menu. And when it comes to these coffees, this one is definitely the most in line with my typical flavor profile. So this is the one I had expected to like the most from this box set. This right here is day 16 of this coffee. And my recipe for this coffee is the same as it was for the Sudan Rume. It's an Onyx recipe, so 16.67 to 1 at 204 degrees Fahrenheit. Brewed to the Chemex, and Onyx is a light medium American for the roast profile. With all that out of the way, let's start discussing this coffee. So day 8, my first impression of it, we'll call this coffee anything but light and delicate. We describe it as a super purple forward coffee at the start, wild and lively mouthfeel, and some kind of sugary pineapple gummies as it cools down with some forest-like tropicals as well. Pretty citric cup of coffee at first. Day 10 was different. Wouldn't describe it as necessarily better or worse, but it kind of toned down the in-your-face first try. Still a bit foresty and tropical with some prominent florals as well. Definitely not clean, definitely not geisha-like, what you'd expect from a geisha. A little bit of lasting smokiness on this coffee as well. Day 13, pretty lively purple candy right off the bat, some pretty prominent florals as well. Purple and florals, and that's this cup, it makes sense. There's a jasmine flavor not listed on here, it's purple and florals. Perhaps open up a little bit more on this day though. Shared some of those sugary sweetness characteristics that the Eugenioides has. It's going to be fun to discuss in the Eugenioides video. And it had this unique pineapple gummy note that was in the coffee on day 8. I was getting it again on day 13. It's the best part of this coffee for me. When you find it, when you get it, and it lingers in the background, the subtlety of those pineapple gummies, it's quite nice. Day 15. When the coffee cools down, the wild intensity of all the flavors kind of comes out. The coffee lingers with some very deep florals and citric components to it. Its initial taste remains every bit as strong and potent as possible. Any sort of subtle flavors are really dominated by the overpowering citrus and florals. And if that does sound familiar, it's probably because the Sudan Rume kind of had the same sort of characteristics. The really nice mango and kind of lighter flavors were dominated by what was a very wine-like coffee. You were getting so much intensity from the wine that it was a little more difficult to pick out what were kind of prominent fruit flavors in that. Same thing with this one. Whatever beautiful pineapple gummy notes there are, it tends to be a little dominated by this very purple, jasmine, strong floral component that comes with this coffee as well. All right, let me go ahead and put up the tasting wheel so you can see what I was getting. And let me say this about the coffee in context for this tasting wheel. When I first drank this coffee at the warmer temperatures, it doesn't have too much to it. It's a little tame, and I was thinking, this is kind of strange that this coffee is relatively flavorless. Then you let it cool down a little bit and the coffee kind of explodes, and that's when it's at its best, is when it's kind of exploded a little bit. When you let the coffee cool down even more, the coffee becomes even more wild and intense, overly wild and intense. And I can't handle how overly wild and intense it gets when it's cooled down too much. This tasting wheel was made after it had cooled down a little bit. And even after it had cooled down a little bit, the finish, the florals, and the citrus fruit are all at level 5 because it is super strong and potent. very sweet cup of coffee, acidity pretty high. What's funny and interesting about this tasting wheel is nothing hits a level 1. Savoriness relatively high, smokiness relatively high, has a little bit of bitterness. Very light on the body, definitely not the cleanest cup of coffee. And that's very un-geisha-like. Geishas tend to be very clean cups of coffee, but this one right here definitely wasn't. And it's just such a kind of unexpected, all over the place tasting wheel for a geisha, but it has to be noted that this is an anaerobic natural, so that probably plays a huge factor in why this tasting wheel looks like the way it does. Alright, my thoughts and impressions of this coffee as a whole, and I have to say this, it must be said. I feel like when it comes to geishas, it is underappreciated the beauty of the lightness and clarity that a geisha has alongside of those beautiful florals and fruit notes, because right here we went the opposite route. We intensified those notes. This coffee is basically a geisha with intensified flavors. And while that sounds good on paper, I think I really genuinely miss the cleanliness, clarity, and light body, the super light body of the geisha-like coffees when it's done in a washed process as opposed to this anaerobic natural. There were definitely parts of this coffee I didn't enjoy. I enjoyed it when it's at the right temperature and you're getting some nice flavors from it, especially when you do get that subtle pineapple gummy flavor. I love pineapple gummies. But that being said, I feel like this coffee would be better as a wash process. I feel like all three of these coffees, honestly, would be better as wash processed coffees. But that's just my thoughts and impressions of this one as well. I believe the type of person I would suggest this coffee to is somebody that does love their super purple coffees. I think if you really want something that, when it comes to intensity, all three of these coffees are for people that love, I'm not talking like intense, I'm talking super over the top intense. They are all very, very intense. You're going to taste these coffees. You're going to taste the florals in this one. You're going to taste the florals and wine in the last one. And when it comes to the Eugenioides, you're going to taste the flavors that I'm going to list in that one as well, because that's what they are. And I'm not sure if that's what Onyx was going for, but that's what you got. And that's what these coffees are, very intense, unique experiences. So I'm going to leave it at that. If you have tried this geisha, I would love to know your thoughts and impressions of it as well. If you're enjoying the content, give this video a like and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. This right here has been a review of the Anaerobic Natural Processed Colombia Inmaculada Gesha from Onyx Coffee Lab. Thank you.